fights with passion, and he inspires.
Are you ready for a war?
All right, welcome back to From 8 Arbitration, the Tuesday edition. I was going to do one last night, but I fell asleep about 8 o'clock, and so I didn't get to do one. And so today's is going to be strictly educational. I've got some discipline that several people have sent me. I told them I'd go over it, and then I also took one offline off of social media and said I'd go over it. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, about the charge, and I have dealt with this numerous times in previous episodes. I'm going to keep doing it because I think it's very important. Now, Sunday, I'm going to have 2 episodes. One, I'm going to do the talking myself, kind of get in somebody's ass a little bit. Then after that, I'm going to have another episode. A few episodes back, I talked about the CCAs. They need to unite. They need to stand up because this administration, as is, has forgotten about them, has abandoned the CCAs. And this contract, this tentative agreement, is evidence of that, right? That would be Exhibit 1 if I was to put that into an arbitration, is their raise, which was catastrophically pathetic. And so I said, hey, y'all need to stand up. Y'all need to unite. And so I said, I'd pay for it, whatever. Y'all have got to get together, CCAs, and vote these son of a bitches out that are in here right now. And so this gentleman reached out to me and said, hey, I'm going to take you up on that. And so I'm going to start doing an episode every 2 weeks or every month, specifically for the CCAs by CCAs. Now, his name is Badmouth Morris. If y'all watch the video on More Perfect Union, which is up to about 2.5 million views right now, which is absolutely insane. And that's just on that. There's also some others. I'm going to talk about that Sunday. But he was in that video, and he's a CCA, a diehard CCA, and so he's going to start coming on and doing episodes. If any other CCAs want to come on here, reach out to me. Reach out to me, and I'll let you. I think the CCAs have got to stand up. This current administration, this president has shit on y'all with this TA and all the things that he's done. They've abandoned you, and so you better unite. When it comes time, closer time to 26, when we vote, every CCA needs to be in the union. Why? Because you can't vote if you're not in the union. You've got to be in the union to vote. So I'm going to implore y'all to get in the union so that y'all can vote these son of a bitches out that have forgotten y'all. Okay? The CLC has made CCAs a priority. How do I know that? Because I'm part of it. I have always said that the CCA should be made a priority. James Henry has said that the CCAs will be a priority. The current administration said to hell with y'all. That TA is Exhibit 1, right? Giving y'all a slap in the face as far as this raise is concerned. So, Badmouth Morris will be on Sunday. He's going to do his own episode, all right? I'm going to introduce him and let him have it. And so we'll have a CCA Corner solely, specifically for CCAs, okay? And so we'll do that. Today, what I'm going to get into is, on this discipline, is the charge, specifically the charge, right? The importance of the charge. And when I gave an episode dealing with the charge, we're going to try to defeat discipline based solely off the charge. No information. Solely off of what we're given from management, right? Here's what happens in discipline. Your supervisors and managers are dumb as hell, okay? And that's just the bottom line. They don't know shit about shit. And so they will get with labor. They will send in an investigative interview, whether it's a letter of warning, 7-day, 14-day, and labor will write that up and send it back to them. Local management doesn't have a damn clue what's on that discipline. They're just going to get it and give it to you, right? What labor does is you've got somebody in there that's full of piss and vinegar, and they're going to start citing everything that they've ever seen on this discipline. We have got to combat that, and I'm going to show you a perfect example of that in just a second. But we've got to start combating every single thing that's on the charge. When I talked previously about the charge, numerous episodes about the charge, you've got to start at the top and read every single thing to the bottom and make sure that it's accurate on the charge, right? Now, you're going to request the information. As soon as you get the charge from the carrier, the notice, you're going to put in a request for information the second you get it, right? Because we're officially on the clock. I'm going to request any and all information management has used to issue this discipline. That's what I'm going to request. It's funny because JB, when he was down at regional training this last year, they had a class and the facilitator was talking about what would you request for this discipline. People are saying, I'd request this, request that. And JB raises his hand. He says, I'm going to request any and all information management used to issue the discipline. And the facilitator kind of was going at him. So, well, why wouldn't you request this? Why wouldn't you request that? Why wouldn't you request this right here? The controlling document. And JB said, because you're probably making their case for them. What if they didn't consider any of those things? What if they didn't use any of those things? And so you're giving them a heads up where we're looking, where we're headed. I'm always going to ask for any and all information management has used to issue this discipline. When I get that discipline, I'm going to itemize it. I'm going to say you got 1 through 10 is what management issued. So I got Union Exhibit 1 through Union Exhibit 10. It's going to be what management has provided me with the information request. If I don't have the request for appropriate action, I'm going to request it at that time. If I don't have certain documents, if we're dealing with attendance, the 3972, 3971, I'm going to request it at that time. Why? Management didn't use that to issue this discipline. They didn't look at it. So if I get a concurring official in arbitration, and I ask that concurring official, what did you look at to concur on this discipline? Well, I looked at the request for appropriate action. Well, how did you look at that? Because it was not used. According to local management, they didn't use that because I asked for any and all information. That was not part of the packet that they provided me. So how did you see it if they didn't use it? Well, I looked at the 3972. Well, hang on just a second, because I requested any and all information, and that was not provided to me. So you're saying that the 3972 was used. Yeah, well, now I've got another issue. I've got a 17 and 31 issue because I requested any and all information, and you're telling me now that I didn't get all the information because you used something outside of that. Does that make sense? So I'm going to request any and all information management used to issue this discipline. That's the first thing I'm going to request. I'm going to get it, and then if I need something, I'm going to use that. And unfortunately, the person who JB was talking to is a DRT member. So you're thinking, fuck, we might be in trouble in that certain region or district if the DRT doesn't even know what the fuck to ask for. But anyway, always request any and all information initially. Get that information, log that in, 1 through 10, 1 through 8, whatever it is. And then we will request other information after that on a second request. All right. So you get the charge, and you're looking at the charge, and you see some discrepancies. Why is that important? Why is the charge so important? If you look at the contract, if you look at the JCAM, it will tell you why the charge is important, right? Everything needs a charge. If you look at page 16.5 of the JCAM, and we're going to go to 16.4, section 4, suspensions of 14 days or less. It states in there, the employee against whom the disciplinary action is sought to be initiated shall be served with a written notice of the charges, right? So if I'm suspended of 14 days or less, they're required to give me a written notice of the charges. If you go to the next page, 16.6, if you look at 16.5, section 5, suspensions of more than 14 days or discharge, it states in part, be entitled to an advance written notice of the charges against him, her. Okay, so that's 16.4, 16.5 says what? We're required to get an advance written notice of the charges. If you go to the next page, if you go to 16.8, under 16.7, emergency procedure. It says written notice. Management is not required to provide advance written notice prior to taking such emergency action. However, an employee placed on emergency off-duty status is entitled to written charges within a reasonable period of time. Why is that? Why is so much emphasis on this charge? National Arbitrator Mittenthal explains it to you right here, right below that language. He says, he cannot effectively grieve unless he is formally made aware of the charge against him. The reason why management has invoked Section 7. And I will use that language in any kind of discipline I get. Letter of warning, 7-day, 14-day removal. I will use that language because he's telling you he cannot effectively grieve unless he is formally made aware of the charge. That's how important the charge is, because I cannot effectively grieve unless I have the charge. Why you are removing me or suspending me or giving me this letter of warning. I cannot effectively grieve it unless I have those written notice of charges. That's the importance of the charge. So when we get that charge, we're going to look from the top to the bottom, like I said, and we're going to address anything that we can find. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to get several charges, and we're going to try to beat this discipline based solely on the charge. No information, just the charge, right? Arbitrator Sims in C-36248. C-36248. This is a case that I had in front of him as removal. Very difficult case because this gentleman was incarcerated. He got his mother to call in for him saying that he was sick, and they kept doing this for a prolonged period of time. He was in jail down in Atlanta, and so he was having his mother, God bless her, call in sick for him, saying that he was not able to get to the phone. Well, they found out he was incarcerated, and so they removed him. Well, of course, on the removal notice, they put all this shit on there. And so I just go down through there, and it was a new argument, but the labor for the other side didn't say anything about it. And so I just go down through there, and I said, so you're saying that they violated this, and this? Yes. And so I had them prove it, and they could not do that. And this is what he says. It's on page 13. Lastly, when the agency is considering whether to charge an employee for some sort of misconduct, as is the case here, it is free to charge what it will, but then it must prove what it charges. There's a lot of arbitrators who use that same language, and I'll read it again because it is beautiful. Lastly, when the agency is considering whether to charge an employee for some sort of misconduct, as is the case here, it is free to charge what it will, but then it must prove what it charges. The first and second questions in the just cause test are, is there a rule, and is the rule reasonable? In the case before me, the agency charged the grievant with multiple infractions of the ELM and a code of federal regulations, and they will always, labor loves the CFR. Title 18, U.S. Code, right? They love that. Problem is, I've not been charged criminally using criminal statutes against me. I had an episode on criminal statutes because it happens all the time. Specifically, the agent listed in its notice of removal charged that the grievant violated the following, and he has all these in there: 66516, 15, 13, 111, 662.1 publication, 6653. All these things, none of these things were asked about either in the investigative interview, but they cite all these things because labor cannot stand it. It's like cocaine to them. They get disciplined and they have to include all this bullshit. And so we have to start holding them accountable for that. He says, I would note that 5 CFR 2635 cited in the ELM 662.1 is over 100 pages in length and covers everything from receipt of gifts to conflicting financial interests to misuse of government property to participation in professional organizations. 5 CFR 7001 is a supplement to 5 CFR 2635, addressing restrictions on outside employment and business activities and the statutory prohibition against interest in contracts to carry mail and acting as agent for contractors. Lastly, 39 CFR 447, rules of conduct for postal employees, Addresses everything from prohibited conduct to postal employment activities to political activities, and you get the idea. In my considered opinion, the agency did not demonstrate that the agreement had been disloyal to the U.S. government, ELM 665.11, nor that he failed to discharge his assigned duties, ELM 665.13. There was also no evidence or testimony that the agreement failed to obey the instructions of his supervisor, ELM 665.12. And during the II, the agreement was forthcoming with the truth and admitted his wrongdoing and was cooperative, ELM 665.3. The Postal Service could have very well drafted a notice of removal using far less overreach that could have easily been demonstrated and proven, but it did not. In my considered opinion, the precision used when crafting a removal document is as important as ensuring an affirmative response to each of the just cause questions. The agency must prove what it charges. I'll read that again because that's absolutely beautiful. In my considered opinion, the precision used when crafting a removal document is as important as ensuring an affirmative response to each of the just cause questions. The agency must prove what it charges. And that's Sims 36248. 36248. I've got another, and here's my favorite, and this is one I always use. It's arbitrator Schedler. Okay? And it's C-01233. C-01233. And this is what he states on page 8. A charge in a disciplinary matter has a similar meaning to an indictment in a criminal matter before a grand jury. Basically, a charge is an accusation in writing that claims that the individual named therein has committed an act or been guilty by omission, and such act or omission was a violation of shop rules or usual good behavior expected of an employee and punishable by discipline. A letter of charges is the foundation of going forward with discipline, and the absence of a clearly written charge, what is to be the just cause for the discipline. No discipline can be sustained without a charge. And that's my all-time favorite because I always say a charge, disciplinary charge, is no different than a charge in court. And that's where I got that from, is arbitrator Schedler, 01233. Here's another one of my favorites. Arbitrator Brooks, 28040. 28040. And this is what he writes on the last page, page 7. And they used the wrong date on a removal notice, and they said that it was just a typo. And so this is what he states. This arbitrator does not consider using the wrong date on the very document issued for the express purpose of ending the employee's employment with the agency an insignificant matter. And he threw out the discipline based on that. So he talks about the very document issued for the express purpose of ending the employee's employment with the agency an insignificant matter. That's the importance of the charge. Also, I've read Wolitz before when she said, what's on that charge must be accurate and true if it is to be for just cause. So that is the importance of the charge, right? It's mentioned several times in our JCAM. National Arbitrator Menthal said what? I cannot effectively grieve unless I have that charge. Why you're charging me? Why you're doing this to me? Arbitrators consistently talk about the charge, the accuracy of the charge. Sim says, charge me with whatever you want to, but you better be able to prove that charge, okay? So with all that in mind, I'm going to go over a little bit of discipline with you because I told the people I would. And so the first one, it's going to be, and I've gotten some things printed out for you that I'll read from. It says, charge, improper conduct, failure to follow instructions. And this is a 7-day suspension, okay? You're a fully trained city carrier, and you are well aware of your duties and responsibilities. You are well aware you are required to obey the instructions of your supervisors and managers. Even if you have reason to question the propriety of a supervisor's orders, you must nevertheless carry out the order, and then you may appeal through official channels. You're also well aware you're required to conduct yourself in a professional manner at all times, and unacceptable and unprofessional behavior cannot and will not be tolerated at any time while on duty. This is going to be good. That sounds pretty serious. On November 18, 2024, after completing City Route 18, you're instructed by Acting Supervisor so-and-so to deliver an end on City Route 42. You refused to follow his instructions and left the facility without delivering the mail on Route 42. I conducted a fact-finding with you on November 18th. Your NALC representation was present. You understood that you were to follow the instructions of your supervisor, but you denied knowing that you must nevertheless carry out the order and may immediately file a protest in writing. You agreed that you were given instructions to deliver the end of the Route 42. You stated that you refused to do so because it was your day off, and you had already ruined things you had planned for your day off. You explained that you had a long day. You added that you were not told you had to do anything else except Route 18 until you returned to the office around 6 p.m. You gave no further explanation for your actions. Your actions were contrary to your duties and responsibilities as a postal employee, as well as Parts 66511, 66515 of the Employee and Labor Relations Manual, and Sections 11225 of the Handbook M41, Carrier Delivery, Carrier Duties and Responsibilities. Elements of live discipline. 1. A letter of warning dated April 23rd for failure to be regular in attendance. While the suspension does not result in a loss of time or pay, it may be cited as an element of past discipline, subsequent discipline pursuant to Article 1610. Now, it's covered up, so I don't see that there's any concurrence on there. Of course, that will come out through the information request. We'll request any and all information, and if the request for action is not in there, we'll do that. So I have here discipline for failure to follow instructions and proper conduct. And they've cited a letter of warning for regular in attendance. Now, they're trying to fast track is what we call that. We have an episode early on about that, about fast tracking discipline. To me, if you have regular attendance, then the 7 days should be for attendance. It cannot be compounded with failure to follow instructions. So that's going to be my first argument on that one, is that I've gotten a 7 day for failure to follow instructions. I have failure to be regular in attendance as a letter of warning. And here's my contention. I'm going to say that I'm going to get an official discussion, right? I'll get an official discussion for, say, express mail failure. Then I'm going to get a letter of warning for attendance. What good was the official discussion for express mail failure? Do you get what I'm saying? When you fast track me, when you have one track discipline, when you say that I can discipline you for anything and everything, and most arbitrators will not agree with that. They agree with the union on that. I get an official discussion and I would ask for that. Give me the official discussion they had for attendance and give me the official discussion they had for failure to follow instructions. We will beat that on that there. So we'll make that contention. Also, your actions were contrary to your duties and responsibilities as a postal employee, as well as Parts 66511. Now, what does 66511 pertain to? I have no idea. It's not on here. Do you know who else won't have any idea? The arbitrator. They're not going to have any idea what that is. So when you talk about the charge, being specific in the charge, Arbitrator Roberts loved to talk about the specificity of the charge. What does 665.11 of the Employee and Labor Relations Manual state? I have no idea. It's not in here. So I don't know whether they violated that or not, do you? And that's exactly verbatim what I'm going to ask the arbitrator in my closing argument. I'm going to say, Mr. Arbitrator, do you have a clue what 665.11 is? I don't. I don't know if this gentleman violated that or not. What about 665.15? What does it state? I guarantee you, in arbitration, and I do this all the time, I'm going to have the manager or supervisor, whoever the initiating manager or supervisor is, whoever issued this discipline, I'm going to have that case file shut. And I'm going to say, if you could, tell me what ELM 665.11 states. And 100% of the time, they're going to get in that file and try to start opening. I'm going to say, hold up, don't open the file. Just tell me what 665.11 states. Well, I don't know. Me neither. Tell me what 665.15 states. They're going to look at me. They're going to look at the other advocate. They're going to look at the arbitrator. Just go on and tell me what it states. Well, I have no idea. I don't either. Better yet, let's go to the M41. You talked about the violation of M41, correct? Yeah, 112.25. What does it state? I have no idea. Well, fuck, me neither. You know why? Because you didn't say it in here. You didn't tell me what those things pertain to. Anytime you see that, make sure you make that contention. I don't know what 665.11 is. I don't know what 665.15 is. I don't know what M41 section 112.25 is. If this is a charge no different than the charge in court, it should tell me with great specificity what I have violated, not just titles of things. And so that's how I would beat that, just based solely off the charge. We're going to say that you're trying to fast track me out of here. You got one track discipline. I got a letter of warning for attendance, and I got a 7-day for for failure to follow instructions, improper conduct. All right, those things do not go together. And then I've got some issues with your citations because you didn't explain them. You didn't tell me what they pertain to. Okay, so there's that one. We got some more. Here's another one. The official disciplinary notice of suspension for 14 days is being issued to you for the following reasons. Charge, improper conduct, unsafe act. You are charged with improper conduct due to an unsafe act on November 11th of 2024. You failed to perform your duties in a safe manner, causing a 2-car accident involving yourself and a POV. On the above dates, you were driving while utilizing a phone and made an illegal U-turn on Google Street onto Commonwealth Avenue, causing you to sideswipe a customer's vehicle. Now listen to this, and I'll go over this again, but you always pay attention to language, okay? An investigative interview was conducted by Supervisor so-and-so with you on November 20th of 2024 in the presence of your shop steward so-and-so. This was your opportunity to explain your actions. During the interview, you acknowledged your awareness of the investigative interview, ELM provisions 665.3, 665.6, 665.11, and 831.332, as well as PO 702.151. Now, I'm going to have a hard time believing that anybody said that they are aware of PO 702.151. I guarantee you, when I call this individual, which I always do, I'll call the grievance and I'll say, hey, talk to me about this investigative interview. What is 665.3? I have no idea. Yeah, you do. You do, because they said you're aware of it. Well, only after they read it to me in the investigative interview. So they read it to you in the investigative interview and then asked you if you're aware of it. Yes, I got a good contention right there. I got a good contention because this makes it appear that I'm aware of these things prior to this accident. Okay? PO 702.151. Does anybody listening to me know what PO 702.151 states? Were you aware of it? I didn't think so. Remember those, though. 665.3, 665.6, 665.11, 831.332, and PO 702.151. All right, remember those. I'll get back to you on that. You were asked, were you involved in a motor vehicle accident at the corner of this street and Commonwealth Avenue on November 11th, 2024? You answered yes. You were asked to describe what happened in the accident. You answered, went to make a U-turn on Commonwealth, turned left on this street, then turned right into the parking lot of this street, pulled onto this street, then a right on this street. While on Commonwealth, right lane contact was made with another vehicle. You were also asked what you were doing inside the vehicle before the accident. You answered, listen to turn by turn from my scanner. Cell phone was in the holster on the dash being used for GPS. You were asked if you felt you did everything safely when turning onto Commonwealth Avenue. You answered, yes. You were asked at any point, did you see the gray Nissan that you hit on Commonwealth? You answered, not until he got straight and made contact with it. You were asked if you could explain why the tracking doesn't show you entered the parking lot. You answered, did not actually pull into the parking lot. You were asked, is there anything you felt you could have done differently to avoid this accident? You answered, did everything right. You were asked if it was your first accident while working for the USPS. You answered, first. You were asked if there was anything else you wanted to add or feel should be known. You answered, he can't prove it. Feels like the other car made a U-turn on this street. You were asked if EAP would be assistance to you. You answered, just received EAP info. You failed to provide a reasonable explanation for your actions and failed to work in a safe manner. Based on my investigation and your answers during the interview, I find this level of discipline warranted. So based on your answers and his investigation, this gentleman said I did everything right. Okay? Asked if he did everything right? Yes. You have anything you'd like to add? Did everything right. So based on my investigation and your answers, I find this level of discipline warranted. So here we go. Talking about the charge, right? Based on your actions, you are in violation of, but not limited to, the following sections of the Employee and Labor Relations Manual. 133, Safety Practices. Now remember what we addressed earlier. ELM provisions 6653, 6656, 6611, 831.332, and the PO702. These are the ones that were asked about in his investigative interview if he is aware of these things. We immediately start out with one that wasn't asked about. 133 Safety Practices. 133.1 Always exercise care to avoid personal injury and report all hazard conditions to the unit manager. See 812 for vehicle safety. So we have here a written notice of charges that says your actions are in violation of, but not limited to, the following sections of the Employee and Labor Relations Manual. 133 Safety Practices. So we go to the Employee and Labor Relations Manual and we pull up 133, which should say Safety Practices. Do y'all know what it states? Duplication of functional responsibilities. We got a problem, don't we? It should say safety practices, right? That's what it says. Your actions are in violation of 133 safety practices. The only problem is you go to the ELM, it states duplication of functional responsibilities. We got another part, 133.1. Always exercise care to avoid personal injury and report all hazardous conditions to the unit manager. Let's go to the ELM. What does 131.1 say? No such thing. There's no such thing. Okay? We got something else here. Conduct your work in a safe manner so as not to endanger yourself or others. Report all hazardous conditions to your supervisor. No such language. We've got 112.2, diligence and promptness. That's of the Employee and Labor Relations Manual. 112.2, diligence and promptness. So we'll go to 112.2 of the ELM. What is it? It's dealing with areas, human resources. So that doesn't apply. Diligence and promptness isn't in 112.2 of the ELM. Areas is dealing with human resources. We're going down. 112.21, obey the instructions of your manager. This is also allegedly in the Employee and Labor Relations Manual. So let's go into the ELM and look up 112.21. No such thing. There is no 112.21 in the ELM. Section 665.13, discharge of duties. They finally got one right. There is a 665.13, discharge of duties. Okay. Section 814.2, responsibilities. All employees are responsible for D, performing all duties in a safe manner. They got 2 right. That's in the ELM. How about 812? Safety practices. This is also one they cite that he failed to abide by, that he's in violation of. 812, safety practices. Let's go to the ELM 812. Management responsibilities. Nothing to do with safety practices. ELM 812.1, practice safety in the office and on the route. 812.1 talks about headquarters. Nothing to do with what they cite in this 14-day suspension. So do y'all see what I'm talking about when I say when you look at the charge, look at everything in the charge? Then you go down, you got EL 814, Postal Employees Guide to Safety. General Safety Rules. Section X, Motor Vehicles. E, Driving Regulations 1, General Rules. Where did EL 814 come from? It's cited on the 14-day suspension that he violated it. Where'd that come from? Because I look over here at what they cited. I've got 665.3 was not addressed. These are the things they said were addressed in the investigative interview, right? 665.13, they did not say he was in violation of that. 665.6 did not say he was in violation of that. 665.11 did not say he was in violation of that. 831.332 did not say he was in violation of that. PO 702151 did not say he was in violation of that. So all of the things that they said that they asked him about in the investigative interview, if he was aware of, not one of those was cited as one that he violated in this 14-day suspension. And I have no idea where EL 814 came from. But that's not in there either. Also, when you look at page 29.2 of the JCAM, page 29.2, number 2, the mere fact that an employee was involved in a vehicle accident is not sufficient to warrant automatic suspension or revocation of driving privileges or the automatic application of discipline. I've used that in numerous arbitrations dealing with vehicle accidents, and arbitrators will consider that. Arbitrator Roberts was huge on that. Here's a case that we're talking about here. Besides all this information, all these contractual provisions that he was never asked about and don't even exist, he answered, I did everything humanly possible to avoid an accident. And they say your answers didn't justify. Page 29.2, number 2, the mere fact that an employee was involved in a vehicle accident is not sufficient to warrant automatic suspension or revocation of driving privileges or the automatic application of discipline. So we use that as well. So when we get in there, we'll address just based off the charge. We hadn't even got any information yet, and you've already beat this 14-day suspension. Why? Because you've got things that are cited. ELM, Employee and Labor Relations Manual 133 doesn't exist. 133.1, that language doesn't exist. 112.2, that language doesn't exist. 112.21, that language doesn't exist. It pertains to something else. They got 66513 right, but they didn't ask him about that in the investigative interview. Got 814.2 right, but they didn't ask about that in the investigative interview. 812, that language doesn't exist. It applies to something else. EL 814, they just pulled that out of their ass. So this is labor getting a request for action, and they've included 100% new contractual language that he violated. And that's how labor does, because they're that fucking stupid. Supervisor or manager sends up a request for action. These are the things that I asked about. Not one single one of those was said to be violated in this 14-day suspension. Right? So there's how you beat that 14-day suspension for that motor vehicle accident. You'll beat that. This next one is a little funny. I've got what's happened is this individual obviously had a bad day. And so management calls him in. He goes off on this stand-up talk. And management's telling him something, and he just goes off in this stand-up talk. So they get him, they get the shop steward, and they go back and they're talking to him in the office. He goes off in there. It looks like they gave him an investigative interview, and he goes off on that. And so they just give him a 7-day and a 14-day suspension on the same thing. They give him a 7-day suspension on what happened prior to the investigative interview, and they give him a 14-day suspension on what happened in the investigative interview. All right? If that makes sense. So I'm going to read both of these. It's very difficult to follow, but I got a good cite for you. And I told this individual I would address this tonight. Here's the 7-day suspension. You're hereby notified that you'll be suspended for a period of 7 days. This is a no time off suspension. The reason for this suspension are improper conduct. November 1, 2024, during the stand-up talk, the manager was instructing all carriers that they have 3 weeks to get new, neat, and clean uniforms. One carrier said, "What's going to happen, Ed?" The manager said, "You'll have to find out." You then very loud said, "Nothing going to happen," yelling it loudly. The manager continued with his talk and then said, Mr. So-and-so, hit 613 and come to my office. As the manager sat in his office waiting for you and the NALC steward's arrival, it was taking a long time. Just as the manager was about to come back to the workroom floor, looking for the both of you, the steward walked into the manager's office. The steward asked if we could do this on Monday because you were on 10 and he didn't know what was wrong with you. I said, "No, he needs to come in now. Do you want me to get him or you get him?" The steward then said, "Man, he told me I'm not his daddy. I'm his union steward." The manager said, "Well, we must address this. Your PDI was conducted on 11/1 with this person as your union steward. You were asked some questions. One was, are you aware you are to refrain from loud talking? You said, no. I'm not. How would I know that when I have senior carriers doing the same thing? This statement was false. We do not have that issue. You must follow all rules and regulations and attend work with proper conduct. In section 112.24 and 112.25 of the M41 in part, it states 112.24, display willing attitude and put forth a conscientious effort in developing skills to perform duties assigned. Your conduct this day did not display a willing attitude. Nor did you refrain from loud talking on the floor. 112.25, be prompt, courteous, and obliging in the performance of duties. Attend quietly and diligently to work and refrain from loud talking and the use of profane language. I have taken the following element of your past record into consideration when making my decision. Letter of warning, unsatisfactory attendance. So, again, these individuals are trying to fast track. You got it for improper conduct. I've got a letter of warning cited for unsatisfactory attendance. Now, these things could be handled with an official discussion, loud talking. That's a minor offense that could be handled with an official discussion. But you talk about a PDI was given to you on this same date, right? Handbook M41, City Delivery Carriers, Duties and Responsibilities. Be prompt, courteous, and obliging in the performance of your duties. Attend quietly and diligently to work and refrain from loud talking and the use of profane language. 112.2, display willing attitude and put forth a conscientious effort in developing skills to perform duties assigned. Employer and Labor Relations Manual, Section 665.13, discharge of duties. Employees are expected to discharge their assigned duties conscientiously and effectively. It is hoped that this official letter of suspension will serve to impress upon you the seriousness of your actions and that future discipline will not be necessary. And it's all the regular language, okay? So that's the 7-day suspension. I've got this supervisor and then the concurring official, his name as well. All right? So let's go to the 14-day suspension. And it's issued on the same day. Here's the 14-day suspension. You're hereby notified that you'll be suspended for a period of 14 days. This is a no time off suspension. The reason for this suspension are improper conduct. November 1, same date as before, right? Same date as a 7-day. During your PDI with the manager, this person, and your NALC union representative in attendance, your conduct was improper. As the PDI was underway and the manager was speaking, you would lean over to the union steward, right shoulder, and read the question aloud, answer it, and then tell the manager to move on. You were instructed to stop. You did it again. And again, you're instructed to stop, but you did it again. In all, you were instructed 3 times to stop doing it. It took 3 times of being instructed to stop before you stopped. As we moved on, the manager smelled what he thought was liquor every time you spoke, and coupled with your conduct and how antsy you were, he believed you were under the influence of alcohol. You began to loud talk again, and you said the manager was in his feelings because of what you did on the workroom floor. He said, no, you have one of the dirtiest uniforms in here, and we're talking about uniforms. That's how this got started. While the manager was talking, you jumped up. Oh, this is personal shit. You got personal, and stormed out of the office with the union steward in tow. You talked loud again on the floor with manager approached your case, asked you to calm down. You were asked to allow the manager to take you to the med center to take the breathalyzer test because the manager smelled alcohol on you. You agreed to go. The union steward felt it would be best if someone other than the manager takes you to the med center. So, this individual, a new supervisor, drove you to the med center. During the ride, there you refused to complete the trip and take the test. In doing so, you failed to cooperate in an investigation. You were asked some questions during the PDI. One of the questions was, on November 1st, were you drinking alcohol before you came to work? On your way to work, or last night on 10/31? You replied, night before at 8:30. The manager and supervisor, this person, both smelled alcohol when speaking to you. It was not totally out of your system, or the manager would not have known you were drinking alcohol at all. You were asked if you're aware that you're to cooperate with investigations, and you said yes. But you refused to take the test because someone told you not to. According to your answer, when you were asked to explain why you refused to take the test, your conduct was improper during the PDI and in not cooperating with the investigation. In sections 112.2.24 and 112.2.25 of the M41 imparted states, it states display a willing attitude and put forth a conscientious effort in developing skills to perform duties assigned. Your conduct this day did not display a willing attitude. ELM states in section 65.3, cooperation in investigations. Employees must cooperate in any postal investigation, including Office of the Inspector General investigations. I have taken the following elements of your past record into consideration when making my decision. Letter of warning, unsatisfactory attendance. Again, doesn't apply. Notice of 14-day suspension. 11/12/24 improper conduct. So we got that wrong. That's not progressive. Letter of warning to a 14-day suspension. Now this is a 14-day suspension as well. What they meant to write was a 7-day suspension, then this 14-day suspension. So we have a letter of warning, a 14-day suspension, right? Which is erroneous. I gave you 2 sites that would address that. Handbook M41 City Delivery Carriers Duties. Be prompt, courteous, and obliging in the performance of duties. Attend quietly and diligently to work and refrain from loud talking and the use of profane language. Display a willing attitude and put forth a conscientious effort in developing skills to perform duties. Right? So the charge, improper conduct, not failure to follow instructions, or any of that type shit. Then you have the same concurring, you have the same issuing and concurring official. So there's work to be done on those, the issuing and concurring, right? Because we have the same individuals, same day, a 7-day issued on the same day as the 14-day. Okay? The same investigative interview. We've got A letter of warning for attendance, which has nothing to do with conduct, that will be a huge contention of ours. But I've got a cite that I use for these certain situations. It's arbitrator Snow. It's 06894. 06894. So we have conduct on both of these. You've got conduct for the 7-day and conduct for the 14-day. Both of them state conduct, right? All on the same day. Let's go to page 11 of this decision. And this is what arbitrator Snow states. By contractually committing itself to the concept of corrective discipline, the employer obligated management to use discipline as a means of helping employees recognize their responsibilities in order to become more stable workers. An inherent part of corrective discipline is an opportunity for reflection. This means that there must be an effort on the part of management to impose successively greater sanctions with a reasonable amount of time between those sanctions that gives the grievant a chance to consider the seriousness of his or her position and to modify the individual's conduct. I'll read that again because we're talking about a 7-day and 14-day. They're issued for the same thing on the same day. They're not even a day apart. They're the same day. They were both issued for a thing that happened on the 1st. Both issued on the 12th. I'll read that again. An inherent part of corrective discipline is an opportunity for reflection. This means that there must be an effort on the part of management to impose successively greater sanctions with a reasonable amount of time between those sanctions that gives the grievant a chance to consider the seriousness of his or her position and to modify the individual's conduct. The employer also needs such time to be certain that the employee has not rehabilitated him or herself and that the individual truly may be characterized as irresponsible and beyond rehabilitation in this particular industry. And that's C06894. That's arbitrator Snow. So anytime you have discipline that's close together, even days together, I'm going to use that. You have to give a time of reflection, right? So that we can correct our deficiencies. Here you have a 7-day and a 14-day given for the same infraction on the same date. Could possibly be double jeopardy, but you have kind of the new caveat of the fitness or duty in the second one. Doesn't really matter, but both of them have a letter of warning cited for attendance, so that won't stick. And then you have the 14-day citing a 14-day. That's wrong. That's erroneous. Okay? So just based off of the charges, that's what we can get there. Just based off the charge. I love getting discipline and beating it just based off of the charge. If I can do that, once I get that information, the rest is gravy, right? The rest is just kicking the shit out of them. So we request all the information on these things, on these forms of discipline. After that, like I said, that's gravy. I got one more. It's a letter of warning, and then I'll be done. In accordance with Article 16 of the National Agreement between the United States Postal Service and the National Association of Letter Carriers, it is necessary to issue this official disciplinary letter of warning for the following reasons. Charge 1, failure to follow instructions, scanning. Specification. As a city carrier, you perform an important function in the United States Postal Service which serves millions of families and businesses daily. To do so, the Postal Service has set up rules and regulations you are required to follow as outlined in the M41, City Delivery Carriers' Duties and Responsibility. The accurate and speedy routing of mail is one of the most important duties of a carrier, and you must be proficient at this task. Remember that, because this charge is going to blow you away. Because here's what they say. The accurate and speedy routing of mail is one of the most important duties of a carrier, and you must be proficient at this task. On October 15th, you were assigned to Route 382. You had a SPM request at this address, which you ignored. You stated during your investigative interview that your scanner had died and you didn't receive the SPM. So they're talking about one of those flats and letter scans. What does that have to do with speedy routing of mail? It has nothing to do with it. That would be a question I'm going to ask. Your failure to fully assess and manage the route of which you are solely responsible for is unacceptable. Now I'm going to say that again. Here's a guy who didn't get one of those SPM scans, the flats and letter scans, which means nothing. District's high on those things for some reason. I don't know why, and I don't care. Your failure to fully assess and manage the route of which you are solely responsible for is unacceptable. You failed to perform your duties as assigned. Your actions further demonstrate your disregard for policies and procedures of the U.S. Postal Service. You failed to provide any justification for your failure to follow instructions, and you have demonstrated an unsatisfactory work performance. Therefore, you are charged accordingly. Your actions as described above are in direct violation of rules and regulations regarding job performance found in postal handbooks and manuals, including these listed below. Handbook M41, your conduct constitutes a violation of USPS standards of conduct as expressed in Handbook M41, 112.21, obey the instructions of your manager. 131.33, unless otherwise instructed by a unit manager, deliver all mail distributed to your route prior to the leaving time for that trip and complete delivery within scheduled time. It is your responsibility to inform management when this cannot be done. Now, how in the hell does that apply to an SPM scan? Remember what Sims says? You can charge me whatever you want to, but you have to prove that charge. You better prove every single one of them. You may have a manager step up and say, hey, I told him before that he has to do the SPM scans. There's no doubt they're going to get some manager to come out there and say, I told him before. They'll always lie on that shit. But what does 131.33 have to do with anything? Unless otherwise instructed by a unit manager, deliver all mail distributed to your route. I'd have to ask how much mail he brought back. None. Then what are you talking about? Prior to the leaving time for that trip and complete delivery within scheduled time, I'm going to have to ask for the unauthorized overtime log for that day. It is your responsibility to inform management when this cannot be done. The Employer and Labor Relations Manual, 665.15. Obedience to orders. Employees must obey the instructions of their supervisors. If an employee has reason to question a supervisor's order, the individual must nevertheless carry out the order and may immediately file a protest in writing to the official in charge of the installation or may appeal through official channels. So it talks about hopefully this letter of warning will help you, right? Here's what's funny. On the same date I received that, somebody put up this scanner message. If you're projecting past 2030, please cut the rest of your mail and switch to parcels and spurs only. I need you backing off the clock by 2045, no exceptions. So they're telling an entire station, quit delivering the mail. Quit delivering what we do every day, what we're obligated to do, delivering the mail. That's the service that we provide. So management is telling them time is more important than the mail, right? Our numbers are more important than the mail. Cut the mail. Fuck the mail. Remember, we're losing billions now because of whatever reason. But cut the mail. Bring that back. Deliver the packages. I've got a guy getting a letter of warning for an SPM scan. Here's a station bringing back mail. And I've got a carrier getting a letter for an SPM scan they can't prove he got. So I'm going to use M1458. M1458, and that is the MSP, the scanner data. Can't be the sole determinant for discipline. I'm using that in this case. M1458. MSP data may not constitute the sole basis of disciplinary action, right? That scanner data, that's exactly what you're using here, scanner data. He said, I never got it. He said, the scanner data, I didn't get it. You're basing it solely off of scanner data. So I'm using 1458. You can't go solely off of scanner data. He said he never got it. You can't prove that he did. Said his scanner died. He didn't get it. You cannot prove that he got it. The only thing you have is scanner data. So I'm using 1458. Also, you cannot charge me 131.33 because you didn't prove I brought any mail back. That's the only way you can charge me with that. So I've got an SPM scan, which means nothing except to district. Them dumb fuckers just sit there thinking up shit how to fuck with us. SPM scan scans flats than letters, right? And you got some dumb shit sending out a message on the scanner saying, bring your mail back. Deliver your parcels. That's how far we've fallen, man. We don't even give a damn about delivering mail anymore. Just bring the mail back. Our numbers are more important than the service. Our numbers are more important than first-class mail or priority mail. Our numbers are more important than that. And by the way, bring all this mail back, but if you didn't hit that SPM scan, I'm giving you a letter warning. So that's how fucked up this place has become, man. That's how fucked up the Postal Service has become. I'm going to get a letter warning for some stupid-ass SPM scan that you can't prove I got. And you got managers saying, hey, bring your mail back. An entire station. So, well, there you have it. There's your charge, right? There's your charge. The importance of the charge. How we're going to beat discipline based solely on the charge, right? There's you some good cites, some contractual language, back to some old school training, some educating, right? So hopefully y'all, that helped y'all. Again, Sunday, Badmouth Morris will be on, CCA Corner. Going to start that up. Going to start getting the CCAs involved with this movement, okay? And then also I'm going to talk to you a little bit. We'll get riled up a little bit. We'll have some fun. That'll be Sunday, 2 episodes. Y'all have a fantastic rest of the week. I love each and every one of you with all my heart. I do. I'm a city letter carrier through and through, and all I care about is helping city letter carriers. That's it. The union, I love the union. I work for the union, but they don't mean anything to me. I'm about the city letter carrier. Whatever position I get, it's going to be about putting the city letter carrier first. I love you. I love you, and I'm going to do whatever I can to help you. I promise you that. So I'll talk to y'all Sunday, all right? Y'all have a fantastic rest of the week. Bye.